Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop, Emerald Planet. All the ecology news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's your host, Executive Director of the Emerald Planet, Dr. Sam Lee Hancock.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you on a week-to-week basis from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we look around the globe looking at 144 different nations, looking for those 1,000 best practices, technologies, services, and products that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And as we move through the 21st century, many people are aware that many of the countries and the regions are actually drying out, becoming hotter and much more dry. And so water really is the key for the future. Many people are saying as water is the new oil. Actually, it's much more critical in that because without water, there is no life. And so we have an expert that's coming on that's going to be talking about water, but from the standpoint of something that's on a regional and international basis, talking about the Great Lakes Commission, or what's known as the Des Grands Lacs. And Tim Etter, who is Executive Director for this organization, is coming on by Skype. He'll be with us in just a minute. And a new special guest we've not had on before. This is Joseph. He goes by Joey Lewis Kramer III, Stormwater Retention Credits, SRC's analyst, Michigan State University. And Joey, welcome to Emerald Planet TV.
Thank you for having me.
Glad to have you here. And Tim, I think you're there ready by Skype.
I'm here.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you for being with us. As I was telling you, it's only taken us 2 years to try to get you scheduled to be on. So, Tim, describe a little bit to our viewers about the Grand Lakes Commission, or in French, it's the Grand Lac.
Commission des Grands Lacs is the French pronunciation, or Great Lakes Commission. But we're an organization that's been around for a long time. We were formed actually over 60 years ago, 1955. By the Great Lakes states. We're an organization that was put together through the wisdom of the 8 states that wanted to work together, that wanted to work cooperatively to protect, enhance, promote, develop in a wise way the Great Lakes. So they formed an organization. They set up a compact. They got Congress to approve a compact. So we're sanctioned by federal law under the U.S. Constitution, and we work on behalf of the Great Lakes states to protect and promote and enhance the Great Lakes.
It's really fantastic what you're doing. Tell us a little about the connection, because Canada was invited, and I believe they have some type of associate status with you.
Right. The commission was formed under U.S. law, but if you look at a map, you can see that the Great Lakes are bordered on the north by Ontario and Quebec, on the south by the 8 Great Lakes states. So, as you can imagine, it's pretty hard to manage or protect a body of fresh water like the Great Lakes from only one side of the border. So we sought to include Canada, the Canadian provinces, because they're the equivalent of the Great Lakes states, through a partnership agreement. So the Canadian provinces have associate membership status, which is really just a euphemism. It means that we treat them just like we treat the other states for all intents and purposes.
That's absolutely fantastic, and thank you for that history and background. Tell us a little bit about what is so unique about the Commission or the Des Grands Lacs.
Well, I think what's unique about us is that we were formed by states, by a group of 8 states that got together and said, hey, you know what, we've got something special here. We want to protect it, we want to enhance it, and we're going to work together. And this provision of the U.S. Constitution that allows for the formation of a compact is pretty rare. That makes us very unique, and it results, or the upshot is that the commission, the states, go to Congress and say, hey, Congress, we want to manage the Great Lakes on our own, to our own devices, and we want you to cede to us the authority to manage the Great Lakes as we best see fit. And so Congress granted the Great Lakes that authority. So that's what makes us unique.
That is absolutely incredible. And the title I put on this is, of course, the commission itself, but an international water compact that works. So why does this work between the 8 states that you have, plus adding the 2 provinces in Canada, and you have the United States and Canada itself? So you have many different actors, but yet it seems like it works together very nicely.
Yeah, we have 8 states, we have 2 provinces, we have 2 federal governments, we have all of the cities, we have, one of the things about the Great Lakes is that we have a very complex system of governance. We have many different institutions and organizations. But I think the reason that it works is that we're bound by a common thread, and that is the fantastic wealth that's been bestowed on us as stewards of this fabulous resource. We have the largest body of fresh water on the planet. We have over 20% of the surface fresh water on the planet resides in the Great Lakes region. And so we're blessed. And we also know that the Great Lakes drive our economy. They're the reason that our cities are here. They're the reason that the wealth that is the Great Lakes region and cities like Chicago and Detroit and Toronto, they're the reason that those cities have been so prosperous. They're the reason that those cities were located there. Yeah. So we have a lot to protect.
That's absolutely fantastic. Well, it seems like we're doing very well with Skype. Joey, why don't you ask the next question, please?
Yeah, so Tim, I think one important question is why exactly is it so important to have a binational regional voice speaking on behalf of the Great Lakes?
Well, like I said, the Great Lakes are shared collectively by the U.S. and Canada, by the provinces and by the states. And so, it's a body of water that is drained by the provinces on the U.S. side, on the north, and or on the south, and the Canadian provinces on the north. And so, what happens to the lakes is driven by the land uses that take place in the provinces. And so, if you're Quebec, for example, Quebec is at the far eastern end of the system on the St. Lawrence River. They sometimes have referred to themselves as being at the tailpipe, and they're on the receiving end of what comes down through the Great Lakes and out the St. Lawrence River on its way to the sea. So they care an awful lot about how we treat and manage those lakes. And also the other thing is that our trade is interdependent on one another. Our largest trading partner is Canada and vice versa. And so we care a lot about how our economies are interwoven together as well.
Yeah, that's a very good description. Tell us, how do you go about balancing both the economic and the environmental impacts that you're having through the commission and actually protect the interest of everyone that's involved in and around the Great Lakes?
Well, it's really not that hard. We don't separate the economy from the environment. In fact, we recognize that the environment drives our economy. As I noted a minute ago, the reason that we have these cities here and we have this wealth that was created in this region is because of the transportation that's provided by the Great Lakes, the access to water for manufacturing and for agriculture, and the power that's generated from places like Niagara Falls and the Niagara Power Project, just among some of the reasons and uses of the resource. But we see it in more concrete ways as well these days. And just to give you an example, we're spending a couple $2 billion right now on the U.S. side of the border, cleaning up and restoring the Great Lakes because of decades of abuse that took place in the previous century. Well, what we're seeing is that as we clean up those previously contaminated sites, the economy is rebounding. People are turning back to the water. They're reinvesting in the waterfront. They're building factories and homes and businesses and restaurants with their face to the water instead of writing those bodies of water off. So in the wake of environmental cleanup, we're seeing revitalization and a renewed economic enthusiasm that's really exciting.
That is very exciting. What are some of the biggest issues that you see right now, Tim, that's facing the Great Lakes?
Well, we have some enormous opportunities ahead of us as we look at this investment of a couple $2 billion of cleaning up the Great Lakes. We've got an opportunity to revitalize our cities. But we face some serious challenges. We face a challenge of invasive species that come from all across the globe due to the fact that we're connected by water and by other forms of transportation. We have species that have invaded the Great Lakes. In fact, we have about 180 unwanted invasive species that have been imported into the region, and some of them that are threatening to invade, like the Asian carp that's swimming up the Mississippi through the Illinois River and threatening to enter into Lake Michigan. If that fish gets in, it could be devastating to our fishery and to our economy. So that's one of the problems. We have ongoing opportunities with trade being connected to foreign ports. We have opportunities to enhance shipping and maritime commerce. We're looking at some steps to take advantage of that. But by and large, we have to protect and conserve, protect water quality. 40 million people or so depend on the Great Lakes for drinking water. We have aging infrastructure. That's another really serious problem that doesn't make us unique, but it's especially acute here because we have a large number of older cities.
Yeah, these legacy cities, there are real challenges there as far as the infrastructure. Joey, the next question, please.
Yeah, the Great Lakes Commission actually has an exciting new project called Blue Accounting. Would you be able to tell the domestic and international viewers more about this new project?
I'd love to. Blue Accounting is a name that we provided to an initiative that was really stemmed from a request that we got from the Great Lakes governors. And the Great Lakes governors said, we have all these monitoring programs. We have universities, we have federal agencies, state agencies that are doing this wealth of monitoring. And we know that we're
Tim, you're going to have to be quick. We got about 30 seconds left.
We know that we're investing billions, but we don't know the results of this work. Is our investments, are our investments paying off? Are we investing in the right projects? And so we're going to be doing a sophisticated monitoring project to provide answers to the question of, are we investing in the right things, and can we adapt? Do we need to fine-tune our practices to do a better job of protecting the Great Lakes?
Tim, last question, 10 seconds. What do you see for the growth, expansion of the Great Lakes Commission 5, 10, 15 years from now?
We'll still be working on water quality. We'll still be working on environmental restoration, and we'll still be working on revitalizing and stimulating the economy, wise uses of water resources to protect this most vital.
This is Tim Etter, and thank you for being with us, the Emerald Planet. Good job on your questions, buddy. Anything you do around your face, your coat, it all comes magnifies 100 times. So just leave your coat, it's fine. I go wrong with it. It's nervous.
Well, it's just that it's always on this time. So. Excuse me.
There's more than just books in the library.
Sam, what have you done?
No.
The pen was covering it. Sorry, what? I want the time.
It's never been there.
Il n'y a plus que de livres à la bibliothèque.
Hello. You have a lot of great books here today. You know there's more than just books at the library.
I'm not ticklish.
It's books at the library. No, it's not that bad. You did that.
I don't want to be.
No, I'm just.
I want all the medical treatment available to me.
I wouldn't want my family to have to make this decision.
My doctor knows what's best for me.
An advance directive is your life on your terms. Talk with your family. Decide what's right for you. Then put it in writing.
Documenting my wishes today
Point is, it's
means
never been
my
off
family
my
will
type
have to make
before, but
heart-wrenching
they want to do
decisions
it,
later.
we'll do it.
To learn more, visit www.putitinwriting.org.
1,200 American youth run away from their homes every day. The National Runaway Switchboard is here to help. 1-800.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello, I'm Dr. Sam Hancock of the Emerald Planet. We come to you on a week-to-week basis as we look around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for those 1,000 best practices, the technologies, services, and products that are making a difference as we go through the 21st century. And as we get to 2050, we'll have 9 billion people on the planet, and they're predicting maybe 12 to 13 billion by the end of the 21st century. And of course, water is really the key topic, the key issue, because water is life, and many countries are drying out. The monsoons have changed their patterns due to climate change. So much is happening in the topic of water, the storage, capture, protection, and distribution. And we have a gentleman who is a true expert in this. This is Dr. John W. Allen, who is the Director, State of Michigan Office of the Great Lakes, and Chair of the Great Lake Commissions, also known as the Des Grands Lacs in French. And sitting right beside me is Joseph Joey Lewis Kramer III, Stormwater Retention Credits Analyst, Michigan State University, here to back up for this. But John, welcome to the Emerald Planet TV.
Thank you for having me here. It's great to be with you again.
Glad to have you here coming by Skype. Tell our domestic and international viewers a little bit about what you do as Director of the State of Michigan Office of the Great Lakes.
Well, Michigan sits in the middle of the 20% of the world's fresh water, and we're right in the middle of the geography. And Michigan has always thought of itself and believes it to be the Great Lakes state. We have 9.8 million people here, and what we do with the Great Lakes, the Office of the Great Lakes, is really look at the big issues of the Great Lakes and tend to relationships. The Great Lakes are managed through a set of important relationships, governance questions with 8 states and 2 provinces, and we spend a considerable amount of time within that framework and within those relationships.
Well, you have really 2 titles, 2 very large hats to take care of: the Michigan Director of the Office of the Great Lakes, and then also the Chair of the Great Lakes Commission, or the Des Grands Lacs. And what are the Great Lakes really mean to the state of Michigan?
Well, as I mentioned before, the people of Michigan see themselves as the Great Lakes state. This is a critical piece for us. And if you ask 9.8 million people, they see the Great Lakes, whether it's all of them collectively or the one they're closest to, Lake Superior, Lake Huron, Lake Michigan, Lake Erie. We have 4 of them here, as really the critical components of really what drives them as a people, their culture, their social interests, their ecological interests, their drinking water. All those pieces are so fundamentally important to the state.
Now, I'm going to ask a follow-on question to that, since you have these 2 hats, both as Office of the Great Lakes and then Chair of the Great Lakes Commission. How do the people pass on this legacy? Because this is a tremendous legacy. It's so unique, anywhere on the planet to have this type of bodies of water around you. But yet it seems like everyone I've talked with from Michigan, they are keenly aware of the lakes themselves, the importance of the lakes. How do you impart that information? Is it just because of historical precedent, or is it taught through the schools? How does all this come together so that people have this common interest and passion for the Great Lakes?
That's a good, insightful question. I give a lot of speeches, and in those speeches I often ask for a show of hands who loves the Great Lakes, and should be no surprise that everybody in the audience puts up their hand. But the interesting question that I usually follow up with is I say, where did that come from? And when I can do that individually or in a small group where people can chat, they'll tell me a story. They'll tell me a story about an experience they had, a rock that they sat on, a time they went fishing. So the Great Lakes are embedded both into what we know and understand the circumstances and how they operate and what they are, but they're really very much a sense of the experiences that people have had, and that the love that they've had, and the time that they spent a little bit of time with family either up north or in their community on their water. It has to be both of those pieces.
Yeah, well, that's really critical. And of course, you have one of the home state boys sitting right beside me, and Joey Kramer right here, and he's going to ask the next question. Joey?
Yeah, well, on that note, John, I understand Michigan recently released a 30-year water strategy. What can you tell us about this strategy that you have put in place and its importance to the citizens of our beautiful state?
So the governor a couple of years ago asked us to take a look at a water strategy for the state of Michigan. His simple request or simple notion to us was, we have all this water, what's our strategy? And instead of taking a 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 year, 5 year time frame, we looked at what's the next generation of work we want to do. If we look back 30 years and we look at some of the toxic hotspots and the point source pollution that we've dealt with, we really are looking at a very different set of circumstances. So we took a 30-year approach and said, what do we need to deal with? We need to deal with water as it moves across the landscape, because if you don't deal with it on the land, it shows up in the water, it ultimately influences the Great Lakes. We have to look at stewardship, we have to look at availability, we have to look at recreation, we have to look at all those pieces, and the economy pieces too. Those are all critical elements.
Yeah, looking at that, I mean, there's so many balls you have to keep in the air simultaneously to manage all this, and you have so many different stakeholders. But you yourself have a very interesting background because you're a research scientist. You've been at that for most of your professional life, but also you've been on the business side of water as well. How do you balance both of those and keep those moving simultaneously, as well as, of course, caring for the environment?
Well, there's two pieces. One, I'll just go back to the water strategy. As we built it, we didn't build it from the perspective that we knew. We spent a couple of years traveling around the state listening to people and listening for them to tell us what they valued. So we tried to write the strategy from that perspective. The one quibble I'll have with you in the way you propose the question is the word balance. I hate the word balance because that immediately implies you're walking into the conversation with a trade-off, and I don't think that's the right way to look at it. What we're looking at is a healthy economy and a healthy water system. And historically, we haven't quite got those right, and we left legacies of contamination that we're still digging our way out of. However, if we really think about the relationship between healthy communities and healthy aquatic systems and healthy economies, those have to exist. And the word balance, I think, undoes some of that. I think we're really looking at they have to coexist and they have to be equally aligned.
I think that's an excellent answer, and you did a very nice job with that. You recently had a kickoff event of what's called St. Mary's River. Where is St. Mary's, and then what is the importance as far as going back to native species and almost reinventing, you know, these legacy rivers that, as you know, many of them were so industrialized for several hundred years, and so now you're bringing them back to their former glory. So where is it, and why is it so important to go back and recapture the essence of these ecosystems?
St. Mary's River is a great example of what we're talking about. It's actually technically a connecting channel, which means it connects Lake Superior, which is essentially 10% of the world's freshwater. Half the volume of the Great Lakes reside in that lake alone, and it connects it sort of through the northern part of Michigan into Lake Huron and Lake Michigan. So it really connects those two, but it's a river through that time. And industrialization, contamination, and in this case, the loss of rapids and habitat when a causeway was put across. The culverts were sized too small, and it had a material effect on the fisheries reproduction. So this project that was kicked off is to take those culverts out, open up the causeway, create a bridge to allow more flow over those rapids and to really allow species to proliferate in that system. Once a very productive system, and every expectation is that fish species will do very well. So in this case, it's not so much the contamination side, but it was the loss of habitat side that's important as we really look to the future.
And doing that, I'm going to do a follow-on, then Joey has another question, but maybe quickly you could say is, how do you look at this and avoiding the word balance so that you're bringing back in this natural ethos, this ecosystem? I mean, there's so many parts you have to look at in order to be able to do that.
Well, one of the examples with this project is this is a project the community Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, and the communities, Sugar Island and the other communities, have wanted for 25 years. They identified this as important to their community. This wasn't just something the fisheries biologists said, hey, we got to go and fix the river. Because it's so important to the communities, because it can drive their economies, it can drive their recreation, but it also drives a different relationship between people and natural resources. When you do that, you start to get at this essence of what care looks like. How do you really build that over time, and how do you make it real to people in their community?
Fantastic. Joey, next question.
Yeah, I had a question. Would you be able to tell us, the domestic and international viewers, a little bit about the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative and why it's so vital to Michigan and the region around it?
Yeah, Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, GLRI, is a federal funding program, but more than just the flow of money, the region prioritized its interests and really did so around 43 of the region's most contaminated areas. We called them areas of concern. And it is really getting at the legacy drag or the legacy contamination, the loss of habitat, river systems, and the money is very much prioritized around these systems as we move to the future. But it also really incorporates a critical piece of the way the communities have set up their goals, like we just talked about, and what the expectations and the priorities for those communities are.
Now, looking at all the different stakeholders, and this is really a follow-on to the question that Joey just asked you, John, how do you bring all these in? Businesses, universities, research institute, K-12 schools, NGOs, nonprofits, communities of faith, businesses, of course, the fisheries, even all the agriculturalists, whether it's on the land, in the air, and the water. How do you bring all those in and make sure that they feel like they have a place at the table and they can voice their concerns and then respond back in a realistic way?
Well, you can imagine it's not a small task when you have a region for the Great Lakes, or Michigan at 10 million people, a region at 35, 40 million people. And it takes work, and it takes planning, and it takes effort. But it really is about creating the basis of what that conversation looks like, setting the priorities, engaging, being transparent in your decision making, being transparent in the types of priorities and the types of funding that is and is not available.
Yeah.
Not everything can be funded all at once. They have to be prioritized, but that's a voice. I think that's a role that the Commission plays. That's a role that the Conference of Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Governors plays. There's a wide, rich array of governance organizations in the Great Lakes. We've talked only about one or two here. The Commission being one of the central ones, and there are several others that are Great Lakes Fisheries Commission, and the states and the provinces as well. We all work very diligently to bring that voice forward. That doesn't mean everybody always gets their point of view or their way, but in a democracy, it is critical to have that voice and those representation and that amount of transparency.
About 20 seconds. What do you see for the influence, growth, and development of the State of Michigan Office of the Great Lakes?
Well, it's not so much our growth and development. Michigan continues to rebound. Unemployment continues to drop. Michigan is a powerful and important place to live, work, and play, to do business. And as one state and the multiple states work together, it's really about the health of the region.
This is Dr. John W. Allen as we create the Emerald Planet.
Saving for retirement might be easy for some folk, but for others, it might take a little more work. And for those who haven't started, there are still things you can do to catch up.
Oh, that is good news.
Like getting out from underneath past debt. And don't get wrapped up with high-interest credit cards.
Get you some eyes.
Be diversified with your investments. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Your financial goals are not out of reach. The choice is clear. For a happy ending, choose to save.
Everyone with alcohol and drug addiction is in the same boat. With treatment, you can find solid ground. For drug and alcohol information and treatment referral for you or someone you know, call 1-800-662-HELP.
Dude, are you sure you want this tattoo? Because just do it.
Some mistakes in life are permanent. Like hearing loss. To learn how to protect your hearing, visit asha.org.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we're looking at the most critical international topic, water. As we move through the 21st century, we add another 2 billion people to the planet, more and more demands on water as we look not only to provide drinking water and daily sustenance, but also to provide the food, the fuel, the fiber that comes through the resource that is water. And as we know, water is life, and without it, there will be no life on planet Earth. And so we have a gentleman who is really balancing this as far as how do we look at the environment and protect it, the soil, the land, the air, and the water. And at the same time is how do we really protect the Great Lakes and to make sure that 20% of the fresh water on the planet is well taken care of and distributed in very logical ways. Coming in by Skype is John Linkstein. He is the Commissioner for the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and also he is the Vice Chair for the Great Lakes Commission, or known in French as the Des Grands Lacs. And then sitting right beside me is, he goes by the name of Joey, but Joseph Louis Kramer III, Stormwater Retention Credits Analyst, Michigan State University. And John, welcome to the Emerald Planet TV.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
We're really glad to have you. Tell us a little bit about your work as Commissioner for the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and what does pollution control, how does that directly relate as far as the Great Lakes themselves and the work that you're doing with the Commission?
So I am appointed by the governor of the state of Minnesota, and we have about 900 employees in our agency. We've been around since 1967. And we exist to protect air, land, and water in Minnesota, and of course we have a great legacy of water resources in our state. We have 11,854 lakes, not just 10,000 if you read our license plates, and those are lakes that are scattered about Minnesota because of our glacial geologic history, and we are responsible for assuring air quality under the Clean Air Act, water quality under the Clean Water Act. We are responsible for soil and hazardous materials cleanup under Superfund laws and state Superfund laws. We're also responsible for tanks and tank design and control and cleanup, as well as just all sorts of issues associated with garbage and trash. So all of those things are what we call environmental protection and prevention efforts, and we look to try to do our work in the Great Lakes Commission by cooperating with our other states. And it's one of the great opportunities we get. We have Lake Superior on our abutting our state, and we think it's called Superior for a reason, because it's a beautiful and one of the best Great Lakes.
And also it's right beside Minnesota, so that really makes it Lake Superior. But looking at Minnesota really is well known in the United States. Many people think of California as a leader, but Minnesota has really been a leader for decades as far as the environment is concerned. And actually your work predated even the United States Environmental Protection Agency, the US EPA. So tell us a little bit about the special legacy that you have in Minnesota that some other states look upon with envy.
Well, one of the things that's interesting about Minnesota is that we're at the head of 3 continental watersheds. So none of the water, 98% of the water that leaves our state fell on our state. So one of the great stories of protecting and improving water quality is it's not only for those downstream of us, it's our water. And so that is one of the things that our legislature saw fit to address during the drought of the 1930s. Our laws actually began both in water pollution control, our public waters law protecting the lakes and streams, as well as water used for irrigation and municipal water supply, industrial water supply. All those laws were adopted by our legislature during the drought of the 1930s. And so we have a long history of water quality protection and advancing those, as well as then we had some serious major tank spills in the early 1960s that led to the formation of one agency. There were several agencies previous to the formation of our pollution control agency. We had a water pollution control board that made sure that all the wastewater sewage treatment systems, they were called in those days, were designed to meet code requirements and would function, because the Mississippi River in our state provides drinking water supply to about 50% of the Twin Cities metropolitan area. And so we had major problems with the Mississippi River in the 30s and 40s that led to the creation of our preceding agencies. But those are just some of the things that led to the source and formation of our agency, and it is one of the things that we're very proud of, is that history of getting started ahead of the EPA.
Well, and it's a proud legacy that you do have there, John, so thank you for sharing all that history. Joey, why don't you ask your first question, please?
Well, John, one of the biggest things that I think is important but what are the biggest threats that you see to water quality in the Great Lakes, especially Lake Superior?
Well, there's a few. I would give you three specifically. One is aquatic invasive species. We are fortunate that we haven't had an invasion in over a decade, and we haven't had a new outbreak, but those species that we're still dealing with across the Great Lakes, sea lamprey and other invasive species, pose a significant threat. The second threat I would bring up is just sort of the legacy polluted sites around the Great Lakes. We call them, there are 43 of them around the Great Lakes. The areas of concern, they're in agreement, listed both by the Canadian government and the U.S. government. And those legacy sites contain some of the most toxic materials in the Great Lakes sediments and watersheds. So cleaning those up would be another serious threat to address. And the third is climate change. The warming of our climate, the Great Lakes are a tremendous freshwater resource. Like you said, 20% of the world's freshwater resources. The temperature of Lake Superior is at risk of rising due to climate change, and that will completely alter its ecological system, and it would then lead to accelerated evaporation and other hydrologic losses that we're very concerned about. So climate change is probably the third and one of the more significant challenges I see on the horizon.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, John, and thank you for raising that as the third point, is that Americans, but also the world, needs to aware that climate change is real and here, and it's already happening. It's not something that we're just going to see when we magically get to 2050 and then we have to worry about it. It's something we had to work on as of yesterday, and you're talking about going all the way back to the 1930s as a legacy. What are some of the innovative ways that you're actually addressing pollution control in the Great Lakes area? Because this is something that really falls within the purview of your whole agency.
We do a fair amount of work innovatively, I would say, on watershed protection. The contributing watershed areas to the Great Lakes, I know Ohio has gone quite a ways in this area as well, but trying to address water quality threats at a watershed scale is the most effective way we have found to both implement the Clean Water Act, but also identify how we can take action locally that benefits water quality across the Great Lakes. The second innovation I'd like to talk about is just really green infrastructure instead of gray infrastructure, and trying to find more effective ways at lessening the impact on water quality using natural systems more effectively. Redesigning our gray infrastructure, incorporating more infiltration, more green infrastructure, and just sort of the best and emerging practices in stormwater management. When I was a young hydrologist, when I started in my career in 1980 at DNR, we told everybody to dump wastewater and stormwater directly into wetlands because that was the best practice at the time. Now that's changed a lot in 40 years, and it's time that we get on with adopting the best practices everywhere. Then I would also like to think about an innovation on ballast water. Frankly, we have a challenge in the Great Lakes in managing releases of ballast water from ocean-going vessels and the Great Lakes vessels. So we need to embrace a more comprehensive code for treating and releasing ballast water from ships. The Maritime Initiative of a variety of the Coast Guard is going to help on the ocean-going vessels, but there are lake-going vessels. And a molecule of water that leaves Lake Erie and one that leaves Lake Superior are very different components attached to that water, and we got to do a better job of managing that. And then lastly, just the best practice on controlling our legacy polluted sites. We're doing a great job in some areas of redesigning our control mechanisms, sort of sequestering the polluted material in sediments, and that's something we need to do a better job. So those are some innovations we'd like to see move forward.
I tell you, that's a broad plate that you certainly have there. But I understand also that you're very active and an expert as far as social media is concerned. So why are you using social media as far as reaching out to the public, both as far as protecting the water quality, but also to enhance clean water in general?
Well, I think that government and academics are wonderful people. I'm one of them. I'm not an academic, but I've worked in government my whole career, and I think the days of government having answers that people trust are changing. And so social media is one way I use to try to engage people who disagree or agree on how to move forward. So I've found a lot of opportunities to reach people, especially younger folks in my work. And I think that it's a natural competitive spirit online. Some of the things I find on Facebook, on Twitter, and on some of the other social medias, everybody likes to one-up each other. And so why not one-up each other for water quality? Why not one-up each other for the Great Lakes? I think that's a great chance to use social media.
Well, I'm going to combine the last two questions, John, because the answers you've given to your earlier questions have been so interesting. I wanted you to go ahead and be complete. But looking at the investment in infrastructure and the importance of that, and then where do you see for your work over the next 5, 10, 15 years? If you can combine those together, and you have about 20 seconds to do all of that in. So,
all right.
Got to be fast.
Will do. Infrastructure was built during the 1970s. It's now outdated. We see it in our drinking water systems and in our wastewater treatment. We've got to innovate. We've got to find better ways across the basin. We have the 5th largest economy in the world in the Great Lakes Basin. Clean water is going to be essential to that economy.
Yeah, fantastic. This is John Link Stein, Commissioner, Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, Vice Chair for the Great Lakes Commission. Thank you for being with us as we look around the globe to create the Emerald Planet.
This is firstgov.gov, where we're obsessed with getting you government information.
Brand new student loan applications on the site, baby. This calls for a celebration. Here's your uncle.
So in the end, it was either take the astronaut gig or come work here. What can I say? Duty called.
Dude, that's my cop.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that's Sam's cop.
Oh, sorry?
Yeah. No. Sam's? No.
Just log on or email us and get what you need.
C, change of address form. That's how it's done. D, driver's license renewal.
E, emailing Social Security information.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Nice, we'll allow it. All right, Ed.
What are those? Government surplus cars for auction.
You posted those online last time.
No, you did.
I'm posting them online this time!
For all your government information, firstgov.gov.
Oh, what have we got here? Sometimes you feel tired. You can't seem to lose those extra pounds off your midsection. And your joints hurt when you take the stairs. Well, you're getting older. But I'm happy to say that there's some simple things we can do to keep you happy and healthy for years to come. We can also lower your risk for some serious diseases the older population is often subject to. Proper nutrition is more important than ever. Your body has changed, you know. Not as many treats. A basic exercise plan, lots of walks and fresh air, and most importantly, come and see me for twice yearly checkups to help ensure the best possible quality of life. Now, how does that sound? Good boy.
Improve the quality of life for your elderly pet. Schedule twice yearly checkups that include preventive care and regular lab work. The message from the veterinary members of the American Animal Hospital Association.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you on a week-to-week basis looking around the globe for what we call the best of the best, the 1,000 best practices in 144 different nations, ways that we can actually improve the economies, protect the environment, but also add to civil society development all across the nations, all 214 countries and territories abroad. And water, of course, is the new oil, or the topic that's coming up, as water is life. And as countries become drier and the climate becomes much more extreme, how we're going to be able to manage this most important but very narrow resource, drinking water, and the potable water that we have in many nations. And we have a gentleman from Canada that's coming on. This is Eric Marquet, who is from Quebec. He's a government representative in Chicago and associate commissioner of the Grand Lakes Commission, and also known in French as the Des Grands Lacs. And Eric, thank you for being with us.
It's a pleasure.
He's coming in by Skype, and sitting right beside me is Joseph Louis Kramer III, who goes by Joey, Stormwater Retention Credits Analyst, Michigan State University. So, Eric, thank you for being with us, and tell us a little bit about being a full-time representative of Quebec and, of all places, Chicago.
Well, I mean, it's Quebec has had an office in Chicago for the last 45 years. We do trade, investment, and Great Lakes issues, which are very important to us because the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence are a water system that needs to be managed in a collaborative fashion, and we do so working with our partners for the Great Lakes. And we've been
being in Chicago, I'm sure that strategic location. Tell us a little bit about setting up your office. You said you've been there over 40 years, which is really a long time to be there and ingrained and inserted yourself into society. What do you see as the benefits of being in a place like Chicago, representing Quebec and also Canada in its entirety?
Well, I mean, I think it's for us, the trade relationship is extremely important with the Great Lakes region. I mean, our exports, about something like close to 25% of our exports to the U.S. come to the Great Lakes states, and we've got major collaborations in innovation and clearly environmental issues. So, and if you look at a map, you look at the Great Lakes states are at one end and Quebec is at the other. So whatever happens in the Great Lakes is bound to affect us at some point, and which is kind of what this prompted us to join the Great Lakes, the different Great Lakes organizations, including the Great Lakes Commission in the late 1990s, because we share with the Great Lakes states a lot of history, clearly geography, a lot of trade, but what brings it all together is the water dimension, and the fact that we manage together 20% of the world's freshwater reserve. And with that great privilege comes a great responsibility, and that to manage it in a smart and sustainable way.
Yeah,
and for us, I mean, the issues that are pertaining to the Great Lakes are a lot of issues that fall under either joint or exclusive provincial jurisdictions, whether it's natural resources, environment, transportation, municipal affairs, infrastructure. So we need to be involved, and I think to be really effective, we need to engage our partners from the Great Lakes states, not only the governments, but also the NGO community and other stakeholders. And that's what we've been doing through our involvement in the Great Lakes Commission.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. That's something you are doing because you're a voice for Canada generally and also for Quebec as far as very specifically, because that's your main area that you're representing there. But looking at the commission itself, what do you think as the associate commissioner that you're actually able to bring among the representatives from the 8 states and the United States, even though you're sitting there as a Canadian?
Well, I mean, I think what's very important is the complementarity between what we do, what are our concerns, and theirs. And some of these, if you look at an issue, whether it's aquatic invasive species or nutrients or water levels or maritime transportation, there's a very significant piece of the Great Lakes puzzle that takes place in the St. Lawrence River, and that's where we really come in, Ontario and ourselves, to bring in this complementary perspective, and vice versa. I think we learn a lot from each other. We exchange best practices. And I think what the Great Lakes Commission does as well is that, yes, it's a platform for advocacy, it's a forum for collaboration, but between the governments, between the states and provinces. But what it does as well is that it engages the NGO community and other stakeholders. And that's after that we can, which aren't necessarily, they are very important partners, but it would be much harder for us to engage them directly, but then we can by working through the commission and working on issues of common interest.
That's fantastic. Joey, why don't you ask your first question?
Yeah, one thing I saw important was, how are the Great Lakes economically important to both regions of Canada as well as the United States?
Well, I mentioned earlier that the Great Lakes are a Great Lakes St. Lawrence form an economic region. And when you think about it, if you look at the 8 states and the 2 provinces, you put them together in terms of GDP, it's the 3rd largest economy in the world, almost $6 trillion worth. So that's very significant. It's a key manufacturing base. It's one of North America's vital bread baskets, I would say, from an agricultural standpoint. And we are a very integrated economy through value chains, and we build things together literally. And but looking more at the sectors, I mean, you look at something like the shipping industry, maritime transportation, the economic impact annually for the region. There was a study we made a few years ago that assessed it at about $34 billion annually, and it has an impact on something like over 225,000 jobs on both sides of the border. So that's very significant. But if you want to look at sectors, but there are other sectors beyond shipping. So if you look at fishing, whether it's commercial or recreational, you look at tourism, you look at the beach communities, beach revitalization, the cruise ship industry. You look even like in our neck of the woods, a lot of whale watching going on, and it's so that's very significant. You look at aquaculture, which is really an emerging field, and on both sides of the border, that's interesting as well. Another area that's very important is anything that concerns water technology and water infrastructure. I think as a region, we face a common challenge with respect to infrastructure, how to renew it, how to finance it, how to make it safe, and that has an impact on all sorts of issues, including procurement policies, by the way. And there's also a regional water tech hub of sorts that's developing. We have innovative companies on both sides of the border that are really creating interesting technologies that are enhance the quality of life of our citizens. And if we can address through these technologies the water issues of the Great Lakes St. Lawrence region, we can definitely export them elsewhere, and that's a definite job creator. And one final economic variable I'd like to add. I want to go back to the 20% freshwater reserves aspect. Clean water, we don't often look at it that way, but it's really such an important economic asset because clean water means thriving communities. So if you want to use this water, but you want to handle it in a smart and sustainable way so that people it creates a living environment. And that increasingly that's going to attract investment as well, because its quality of life becomes an increasingly important indicator and a mover of business decisions, and water quality is one of the prime indicators of that.
Eric, Quebec is a gateway, what's called the Great Lakes Seaway System. You've mentioned some of that, and we've kind of talked around it as far as the industries and modes of economy and a little bit about the environment. But what is that system, and how is shipping so important not only to the province, but also the Great Lakes in general?
Wow. Well, I think first we have to see, if we look at ourselves as a region, the economy, the regional economy is extremely diverse, but it doesn't, I think it works by bringing together the strengths, whether it's raw material, whether it's capital, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's a skilled workforce, together to create value. It's almost like a 1 + 1 = 3 principle here at work. And but what is the key conveyor of that, the key vector to bring the region together? A lot of it involves its transportation, maritime transportation, and logistics infrastructure. So that's a very significant aspect. Of course, historically, and even more so today, I think that maritime infrastructure makes us a key global economic actor, because we're the gateway to Europe, and some say to the emerging African markets, and even in some cases with the China-Max boats leaving out of Sept-Îles Harbor, we're connecting with Asia now. And the reverse is true. But I mean, that's without that kind of infrastructure, it is while we have to be very smart about how we use it, but it plays a really significant part. It's a huge strategic asset, and which is why in 2015 the Quebec government unveiled its maritime strategy, which is a huge undertaking about something we expect to have something like $9 billion worth of private and public investment over the next 15 years. And it's a strategy that works on 3 pillars. The first one clearly is investing in infrastructure. Economic development is a very important one, but the protection of maritime ecosystem is the second pillar of that, and then that's very important as well. And the third one is having the social acceptability for these projects. That is that local communities have to be involved, and they have to have a stake in it. It can't be imposed to them. That involves coastal communities, but also First Nations communities, or in our case. So that's I think that's very significant, and it puts us in a great situation to capitalize on the new generation of trade agreements that are coming about, whether it's Canada-Europe, whether it's TPP, whether it's eventually United States-Europe trade agreement. But it's not only for Quebec, it's for the entire region. But it has to work as a system, and it has to work with a long-term view, and that's really what the environment is.
Yeah, Eric, we've totally run out of time. Actually, we've just run out of time. So thank you for being with us and sharing all this very important information on behalf of Quebec and the Des Grands Lacs. And Joey, thank you for being on Emerald Planet TV. This is absolutely wonderful, and to have all this fantastic information to be shared about what's going on as far as the Great Lakes Commission is absolutely fantastic. And thank you, dear viewer, for being with us as we look around the globe to create the Emerald Planet.